As the global coronavirus pandemic dashes hopes of catching our favorite artists on stage in 2020, DJs, bands and musicians have taken to the internet in a bid to keep the connection with fans alive. But living rooms have become a ubiquitous backdrop to countless live streams. And for Perth-born electronic powerhouse Pendulum, that just wasn't good enough. Load Error their alternative. An armor-plated military fort off the coast of Portsmouth, built in the late 1800s. Logistically, it was no mean feat, with 2 tons of equipment to move through a loading dock and up a ladder with the cold English Channel on the other side. I think it made a statement, Pendulum frontman Rob Swire said. During the whole lockdown thing it's been kind of hard to put an original stamp on a set or a piece of live music. Everyone's been playing from their living rooms, everyone's playing next to the f***ing fridge, so we had to come up with something new. The end result, an hour-long live-streamed performance at Spitbank Fort, was broadcast in October and also heralded the drum and bass outfit's first new material in a decade. The double aside not being able to perform live has other pitfalls. Even with their show at Spitbank Fort and a well-received global release, the group's new material still hasn't been tested in front of crowds. When we're getting ready to release something, always a huge component of it is playing it to small audiences, or sometimes even big audiences, and getting a lot of feedback from that, especially when it comes to Rob doing final mixdowns and stuff, McGrillen said. That's one thing we've definitely missed. Pendulum will be able to break free from the bonds of live streaming soon and give crowds a full dose of new music with a homecoming headline slot at Perth's Origin Fields New Year Festival. Billed as Pendulum Trinity, the group's founding members, Swire, Gareth McGrillen and Paul L. Hornet Harding, are the first headliners announced alongside Australian house heavyweight Dom Dolla. Based in the UK, McGrillen and Swire are very much ready to do the whole quarantine thing and fly to Perth to join Harding, who lives in the group's hometown. With coronavirus cases soaring around the world, it seems there's nowhere else they'd rather be. Perth's the safest place in the world right now, McGrillen said. It's been a long time between drinks on the new music front, with Swire and McGrillen splitting off to form the electro-bass-driven Knife Party after Pendulum's last album. Pendulum shows continued, primarily driven by Harding, and when live shows returned in 2016, so did the ideas for new music under the Pendulum banner. As with anything released in 2020, it's tempting to read into the new tunes as inspired by the trash fire year that was, but Swire said the roots of, I think current events might have added 20% angst to the sound, he said. 10 years is a nice round number and I sort of feel if you get away longer than that, you may as well not bother. We'd been doing the Knife Party thing for about 10 years, we always feel like switching it up. And while 2020 marks the first new Pendulum music in a decade, it is also another milestone. 15 years since the group's explosive debut album, the release still holds a special place for fans and the group alike. The tracks on it still feel kind of magic, Swire said, but at the time the trio didn't know whether they had a hit or a flop on their hands. It was a weird time for us, we'd only been in England for about 2 years when we wrote it. In retrospect, it's kind of the sound of culture shock and sleep deprivation, Swire said. I think the first time we knew this whole thing had some longevity to it was when we made the next album, 2008's. We sort of switched the style and it still works and we thought, well, we're onto something, because we've brought all these new fans in who don't even like drum and bass. There's a temptation, listening Toso, is this a conscious effort, or a byproduct of almost 2 decades producing forward-thinking, genre-blending electronic hits? The latter, largely. Swire and McGrillen agreed they never intended to follow their earlier work too closely, but when inspiration strikes, well, sometimes it just pans out that way. It somehow just organically falls into either style. You get a sense halfway through, you get a sense like, this sounds like kind of a